Okay. Well, it's been a while, but welcome back. I'm Lawrence Temple, your host here for From There to Here. And I have a guest that I have known from once upon a time. I've been blessed to be in the school system, and some of the kids from back there are now grown ups and they're doing great things. This is business owner. She's local if you're here in the Ormond area, Nicole Damico. And Keys and Collars is her business that I'm going to have her tell you about. And we're going to talk about her business and just growth as a young person and all kind of stuff. Come up. Good afternoon.
Hello. So happy to be here with you, Mr. Temple.
This is wonderful. Um, I normally don't tell guests much prior to, so I think the one question that I am going to ask, I think I told you was, what would be your elevator speech? You have, you know, 12 seconds that you're in an elevator with someone and you have to boil your whole existence down in a few seconds, which is not fair. But if you had to do that, what would you say?
If I had to do an elevator speech, I think my elevator speech would be along the lines of, it would be easy if they were in the elevator with any type of animal, whether it was a cat or a dog, because that happens. That is a great way to start conversation by asking what the animal's name is and going off and saying, my name is Nicole. I was born and raised in Ormond Beach, and that is where I started my business. And I love animals, and I was able to create a business from a dream I had as a little girl, connecting the two things of being a business owner and animals into one.
You, as with most guests, everything you say gives me like eight other directions I could go from each thing, which is wonderful. So you are a business. How long have? What's the name of your business, and how long have you had it?
So the name of the company is Keys and Collars, and I started it in October of 2016 at my parents' house.
And I think I know the answer to this, but so when you got out of high school, the day you got out of
Hmm.
high school, you clearly knew that you were going to start Keys and Collars. Is that how it happened?
That is not how it happened, actually. It is quite a windy road, if you don't mind me actually telling my story, if you guys want to jump in the car with me and drive along.
Oh wow, go.
All right. So graduated high school and, I always knew that I would go to college. And my parents, as a lot of Floridians did, is they paid into Florida prepaid. So you could do 2 years at community college and 2 years at a university already paid for, at least a percentage of it be paid for. And with incredible navigation from my vice principal, assistant principal there at Seabreeze, and the classes that I took, I was able to also obtain Bright Futures. And so my schooling was essentially free, which was wonderful.
Okay.
As far as what I wanted to do, I think in my mind, I always knew I wanted to be some sort of business owner. And I think in high school, I even had the dream of doing like interior decorating because trading spaces was just such a big show back in the day. And um, I thought that would be really neat. So I went into business administration and more so not really gearing towards interior decorating, but more so along the lines of everything as a business. So it almost kept my path so vague that no matter what I chose to do, I knew that I would be able to do that with a business degree.
Okay.
I went to Daytona State College. At the time, it was Daytona Beach Community College. And then I did my last 2 years at the University of Florida. Go Gators.
Go Gators.
And I knew that whether it was me starting a business, working for a business, or any field really, ultimately it boils down to being a business. So I learned the ins and outs through college. And the way that they kind of work the job fairs in college is they gear you to a job fair. And you get to meet all these companies and you're giving out your resume and you're meeting all of these people who want you to work for them because you're established, you're going to have a degree from the University of Florida, business, background. And I found that retail management, it was quite in need for any type of manager. And out of college, I had done an internship with a department store. And so I ended up, after graduating, already having a job lined up, which
Okay.
was hard to come by for some. So I felt very lucky. And I worked in a department store job. I was a department manager or an area manager, and basically worked very long hours for essentially little pay. I mean, when you're getting salary, it was kind of like I was gaining the experience, but it was just too much. So from there, I kind of left that job and walked into the opportunity of becoming a realtor. So I thought I'd give the realtor vibe an option. And that was an exam that was very challenging for me because it kind of brought me back to college with having to study and knowing, the ins and outs of real estate and the laws. And it really did kind of push me to my limits. But I ended up getting my real estate license and I worked for a local realtor. Um, but it was again one of those situations where I felt like I was providing for somebody else's dream and I just felt very burnt out. So I kind of took a back step and just after all of the hours I had been working as a realtor, I decided to really kind of lay low and I ended up working for a medical office and um, just kind of being like a receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was not making nearly as much money as I had. It really felt like a step backwards, but I almost felt like I had to do it for my mental health after being a realtor. So did that for a while, and there were some life changes that kind of made me realize I wasn't 100% supportive of the medical office that I was working for. And so I then found myself working for a local medical biller. And I ended up being with them for about 3 years.
Okay.
Um, it was great because I had the, it was like an 8 to 4 job, nights off, weekends off. And I got to leave work at work. And I loved the business that I worked for. I found a lot of new friends by working there. And then my mom had gotten sick. She had been diagnosed with lung cancer. And during 2016, she had actually asked me to move back home to help my dad around the house and to help her when she needed it. Um, so it was around October of 2016 that my friend had messaged me and just said, hey, Nicole, I have a friend who is looking for somebody to stay at her home with her dog and the cat. They live in LPGA. I figured this would be perfect for you since you're living at home. And if you just need a break away from, your parents and everything, this might be a good idea.
Mm.
So I was like, sure, give me her number. I'd be happy to reach out. So I spoke with the potential client, and unbeknownst to me, it would have opened up this dream of mine where it was just such a professional conversation. And we set up a meet and greet for me to come by. And I remember sitting out in the driveway with my parents and got off the phone and I looked at them and I was like, what do you guys think of me as like starting this as a side business? Obviously I'm working from home with my medical billing job. I could take this, wherever and be able to stay at people's houses and provide them that care and that comfort of knowing somebody is home with their animals while also watching over their house. And, my parents were like, that's a great idea, but make sure you go about it the right way. And I was like, what do you mean? And my dad, coming from a corporate background, working for a public supermarket,
Okay.
and my mom coming from the entrepreneurial background as being a hairdresser for the last 45 years,
Mm.
they both said, make sure you're licensed, make sure you're insured, create a name, a business name, have some business cards, and let's get this thing rolling. I think they were just as excited to see me out of the house as much as I was. So um,
Okay.
it was, that was the beginning. That is kind of the pathway I took. And each job I had which really seems like on total sides of the spectrum. Um, Although I took away something from each one, or I learned like, this is what I want from this, my next job, and this is what I don't want from my next job, it kind of led me to this possibility of the business that I now have.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
So windy road, but I'm glad you stuck with me.
Yes. No, this show is all about the path, so that
Hmm.
people know there's not just a direct path always from A to B. There's really never a direct path. And if you think you're on a direct
Absolutely.
path, there's more path coming that you just don't know about. So your winding road is
Absolutely.
perfect.
Thank you. I will add that after I'd started my business, I still was working as a full time medical biller for the next year.
Okay.
Um, but life happened, and in 2017 of April, my mom actually passed away. And when that happened, your life just kind of comes to a halt. And I realized I couldn't do. I realized that the clients that I had scheduled for May, I was going to have to call them and cancel. And although my heart was already breaking, it hurt even more knowing I was going to have to let people down.
I see.
And I hated that. Um, so I realized in a really, weird way that I was going to eventually have to have some sort of backup, um, another person, somebody that was basically an extension of me. During the time following my mom's passing, I had taken FMLA, which is the Florida Medical Leave Act, and I had taken 3 months off of my medical billing job. And I found myself actually really missing keys and collars and missing my clients and missing that connection and that comfort that animals naturally bring. It's like a nature's therapy, essentially. And it was July when I had to go back into the medical billing job, and they asked me to come back into the office because I just, obviously went through a traumatic event. They wanted to make sure that I was okay and caught up on all the new policy changes. And I remember sitting at my cubicle and just being like, I hate it here. I did not like it anymore. And it wasn't the people, and it was almost like the monotony. It was the not being flexible, not having that human interaction. When you're inside that box, your mind starts going, and it was just too much time to think.
Okay.
So it probably took me about 2 months, and in the beginning of October, I decided to put in my 2 weeks. And I remember calling my dad before I did it, and I said, Dad, I think I'm going to take this leap of faith, and I think I'm going to do keys and collars full time. Because at that point, I had two team members who worked for me who helped cover jobs because we were growing from word of mouth. And my dad said, I support you 100%. And so it was just one of those moments where right before I clocked out, I put in my 2 week notice. And the next morning, I received an email back that was basically my boss kind of wishing me well, because it was no secret that I had this business, and everyone, really wanted to see me succeed, which was always a great feeling of knowing people were in your corner.
Yeah.
Um, and so my last day at the billing company was October 17th, and my 1 year anniversary for Keys and Collars was October 18th. And you sit there and you wake up every day and you're kind of like, wow, this is still working. Um, or how is this still working? And you just wonder, how am I going to fill 40 hours a week? And they fill up. You're able to fill them up. So that was my mom passing, although, like I said, it was a very, very heartbreaking and traumatic event for somebody to go through at 29 years old. It really was the catapult that pushed me into this next level of my life and my career
Mm.
and making this business my way of living.
so much of this to your story. People talk a lot about being entrepreneurs and business owners. Um, for example, I come from a teaching world. So people who
Hmm.
aren't administrators or principals, they talk about being one, and they have a certain picture in their head that you're the boss, so everything is great for you all the time. Can you
Right.
tell me what maybe what you like the most, or some what you
Hmm.
really like about being your own boss, and what are
Right.
some of the difficulties that people maybe don't think about when they fantasize about being the boss?
Right. Absolutely. So, very easily, what I love most about being an entrepreneur is the freedom to come and go as I please, to create my own schedule, to be able to travel and still be able to work, which depends on the type of service that you're in. You know, with us being a service industry and me having the team that I have, I'm able to do that. Um, but a good friend of mine that I actually met at the coffee shop, he said it perfectly. He said, as entrepreneurs, we call it traveling because it's not a vacation. When you're traveling, you're still working, but you get to travel. You know, entrepreneurs don't get to take vacations. And if they do, they're very rare, because you always want to stay in touch, especially when it's yours. Um, you do not mind working 24/7 because it's your baby.
Okay.
Uh, you are investing in yourself. So I would definitely say the freedom is the best part of being an entrepreneur, and just knowing that uh, you are bettering yourself every day, and everything you do is an investment into yourself. I would say the biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur uh, is you wear so many hats, and sometimes you get lost in that.
Okay.
And you may lose yourself to it. So, especially when you have a team, you are a therapist, a marriage counselor, a babysitter, a financial advisor, the list goes on and on. And, but you as an entrepreneur want to have this impact in a good way. And so you do that because you not only want to better yourself, but you are going to be only as good as the team that you create because they are an extension of you. But I will say that it definitely is the most challenging. Is you, although it is your business, you can't just think about yourself. You have to think of others.
Say that. Do you did you slash do you have a problem of turning it off when you need to turn it off? If you know what I mean, to allow yourself to just go have fun or be with people or whatever, and not be locked in your mind somewhere else. How? Tell
Yes.
me about that dynamic, I guess.
So as our company has grown, I've been able to delegate more and more. And so being the type of person I am, which is just a very type A kind of controlling, because you're afraid that if you loosen up your control, that your business is going to fail. And it's quite the opposite. I think it's that whole idea of holding a butterfly too tight, because you're only going to hurt yourself in the long run because you're not giving yourself that mental break, um, or giving that time to turn off so you can spend time with your family and your friends and not being so wrapped up in it all the time. So I will be transparent with you that it is a dynamic that I still work on every day. I have not perfected it. My team tries to assist me in every way that I can, but I think it's very natural for someone to always want to stay involved, especially when it's their business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as the days and the years go on and our company begins to grow and we create more of a structure where I can turn off and I can and trust my team members, and I know that everything will go as well as it can, um, that will be a goal of mine that we, are working on every day. So, but it is tough. And I think it's hard to separate that part of your life from the rest of your life, since in most people's cases, this is a big part of their day to day. their way of living,
Mm-hmm.
their way of creating a life for themselves. Um, and you want to keep it going so you have that stability. Uh, but you also have to make sure you take care of yourself first, or you can't pour into other people's cups if yours is empty, type thing.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. Uh,
Hmm.
let's go back to maybe when you're a couple years out of college, maybe something that I, in keeping contact with a lot of young people that were my students,
Hmm.
and I've watched them into their 20s and 30s. I call it the comparison trap. Like maybe it's a year or two or after college age or whatever, and they look around at other friends they went to school with, and they felt
Hmm.
like they're ahead. We're the same age, but they're ahead of
Right.
me, or I'm behind. Or did you ever deal with that dynamic? Because I see that a lot, and if so, how did you navigate that?
Absolutely. So I think a huge reason for that, and it's such a double-edged sword, because I think social media has the biggest impact on that, because social media, everyone puts their best foot forward. It's all about success and happiness, and people rarely make any type of post about struggling or uh, being raw or vulnerable about what they're going through. And that was a promise I always try to make to myself, is being as vocal and relatable as possible, and not making anybody think that this was all rainbows and butterflies doing this business, because it's quite the opposite. Um, I don't think owning a business or being an entrepreneur is for everybody.
Okay.
I think you definitely have to have a certain type of, not necessarily a thick skin, but a fire that burns within you. Because I know that daily, and even now as 34 years old, you naturally compare yourself to others and
Yeah.
where they're at. Whether they knew they wanted to be a doctor since they were 6 years old and they are a very successful surgeon, or if you have somebody that just happened to have luck fall upon them and they got their dream job right out of college. And I think it's really hard to separate yourself from that and know that you really have to remind yourself that everybody's path is different, and that you are living out this life because either A, you have something that you need to teach yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or B, there is a lesson that you need to teach somebody else. And you may just never even know that.
I like that. I see that.
Hmm.
Not just a lesson for you. And I thoroughly believe that there are lessons ahead of you that you don't always even like, because it's not just for you. It is for somebody else.
There's a quote out there, and I tell myself this quite often, especially relating to losing my mom at such a young age. To me, being 29 and losing my mom and not having, I have a handful of moms in my life that attribute to being that bonus mom, and I could go to, but everyone knows it's not your mom. And I always remind myself that you were given this mountain to climb to show others that it can be conquered. And I think that is just such an important lesson when you feel like you just keep getting handed all of these frustrating obstacles. A lot of people say, why me? Or why do bad things happen to good people? Well, it's because you're going to be able to conquer it, or you're going to be able to show others that this is possible. And maybe somebody else wouldn't, or maybe they need to see it through you first. And I think that is just an important life lesson, that once you kind of grasp that,
Mm-hmm.
it's not so much why me, but it's like, this is why it's me type of thing.
I like to put it in terms of recycling trouble. So you have trouble comes to you, you recycle it and make it a good thing in the
Right.
life of the next person, the next man, or etc.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Well, speaking of that, uh, being an example type of thing, have you had occasion to, well, I'm sure this is true. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, though, to be an example to those that maybe to employees or other people who see, hey, you have a business and they pull from you in one way or another. Are you conscious of that happening?
I have had people reach out to me, whether they were team members of mine, um, even my therapist.
Yeah.
She she said, Nicole, you inspired me. She was working for a corporate healthcare system here in town, and she told me, you know, she'd been my therapist for about 2 years, and she said, Nicole, I want to let you know that you have inspired me to make this leap of faith to go into my own private practice. And that was just really neat to hear from somebody that I know I went to work through my troubles, and to know that this was something I was helping her through at the same time. It just reminds you that everybody is human, and
Uh-huh.
just because somebody may look like they have their life together or they're paid to make sure your life is together, everybody struggles with that. And
100%.
I've had team members, you know, have to move and just miss the job terribly. Or I had a team member who this job made her realize she felt confident enough to get a divorce and move back home and start her own pet sitting company.
Huh.
Um, and it was just little things. I mean, not to say that you're always going to end up with that result with the people that you employ or the people you come in contact with. But again, you never know what impression you're going to make on that person. And so I always think you have to be kind to yourself, whether you are having all these successes or these failures. Because I think if I were to shut my doors tomorrow, I could be happy with the success that I've had, and not just in a financial way.
Yes.
Um, in a way of having that effect on the people around me.
Uh, you said something that tends to be a common theme, and maybe this will be my last question, I guess. Of all the people that I've interviewed, the majority of them have mentioned the value of therapy, whether it was an actual therapist
Mm.
or talking to just somebody, but the majority have mentioned therapy, and they all have these levels of
Yes,
success, but they've almost all to a person mentioned therapy to some degree. Would you mind sharing the value you've seen in talking to a therapist or to a confidant in general, but let's keep it on therapy right now. How has that been a boon to
absolutely.
you?
So it's it's ironic because you feel like you're surrounded with people all day. What could this one person do to change the way that I'm thinking or the way that I handle situations? And I think a good therapist doesn't just hand you the answers. The good therapist is going to make you think, okay, what tools can I use? What would I do if I was offering this advice to a friend? What would I say to them? And also, what do you want your end result to be? And you start weighing those options. Um, it is unbelievably important to have a support system when you are going through this windy path, because you are going to have people in your corner and you're going to have people against you or telling you that, hey, this is never going to work, or how can you even think that this is going to be a business?
Hmm.
Or they might not like your management skills or the way that you run things, or they think that they can do it better. And maybe they could. But I think that when you have that support system and those people who are basically your cheerleaders, or they're supporting you no matter what, and you have that therapist to talk to and talk you through it and make you realize you really, it takes a lot of um, it takes a lot within you to quiet that negativity, because it's constantly around us.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not everybody is going to have those kind hearts and approach you with respect and patience. And think therapy just had such a positive effect on my life because you have to realize you can't just go to them when you need to put a fire out. You need to go to them to make sure that you are keeping that consistency within your life of knowing, I'm not sure if I'm handling this the right way, or I'm not sure if I'm being too hard on myself this week. And they're almost like a sounding board. And you can say these things to them, knowing that there is no judgment and that they only want the best for you because they want you to become a better person in society. And they don't want you to have those negative feelings or that negative role in somebody's life. So
Mm.
they almost start to create this mindset where, not that, I don't think the end goal is that you don't need them anymore,
Okay.
but to where you might come across a problem or a thought or a situation where you can sit there and calmly figure out, okay, this is how I'm going to handle this, and keeping your emotions at bay and making sure that you are giving respect to the person, but also respecting yourself in the whole realm of things.
I get that. I love that. And again, that's a common theme with all these successful people I've talked about. Almost all of them talked about the benefit of therapy. Okay, this is my last question. I'm gonna squeeze it in
Okay.
about a minute's time.
Yes.
Imaginary situation. You have a
Hmm.
good friend and they say, hey, I have a daughter, Julie. She's 18 years old and she's about to graduate. She'll be walking across the stage of high school next week.
Okay.
Good student, good kid, did great things in high school, but feels very unsure about what they really want to do with their life. They've got
Hmm.
accepted to college, so they're gonna go, they guess, whatever. But they've done everything right to this point. They just don't know what they want to do next. And they come to you and they say, we've seen your had success. Would you just talk with Julie? What
Hmm.
advice would you give, or what would you say to Julie in that conversation?
That's a great question. And I've had these questions before because I think it's becoming more prevalent across our generations, especially the younger generations, is sometimes college isn't an option for everybody. Um, but I would almost mirror the same situation I went through. I would say, go do your general studies in undergrad and figure out what really piques your interest. Is it math? Is it science? Is it finance? Is it history? Is it law? And kind of start feeling around. Join organizations and see which one really makes that fire within your heart
Mm.
burn. Um, and just don't take your interactions with people lightly. I feel like we truly cross people's paths for a reason. And I think it's to either remind us of something or to almost trigger that thought of, oh, I never thought of that before, because we don't know everything. And people are around us to teach us new things every day. Um, I would tell her to be patient, and I would tell her to stay open minded, and that it might take 10 years, but you'll figure it out. And it's going to just be, you're going to just wake up and just say, that's it. That is what sets my heart on fire. And that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That's excellent. That's going to help someone because I have those conversations with young people and went through it and go through it in my 50s even still. I appreciate
Right.
it.